But let's start with the kind of you use the term drowning in chaos. Typically the founders that you're working with are drowning in chaos. What does that look like? When
Mhm.
you're first engaged, just I feel awareness precedes understanding, understanding precedes change, so that for people listening, they might feel this, but what does it look like if
Mhm.
you walk into a business drowning in chaos? What is it characterized by?
Mm. That founder is like the answering machine for everybody. So that delegation hasn't worked very well. And so accountability has, in my mind, that's a symptom of being able to delegate and put decent accountability in place. So look, you're accountable for this area. You own this. This is your lane. Whether that's marketing, sales, IT, finance, delivery. And as a result, what happens is the founder is still making all of the decisions or making too many of them. And so that means that the founder has been unable to pull themselves out of the day-to-day operations. And so they are struggling to focus on strategy, and therefore they're struggling to shake the tree for new business and find new deals. So I would say time poor founders are predominantly who we serve because they've been sucked into operations and they're just being asked questions from their team because of struggling to delegate and being able to set up decent accountability structures. And I guess just while I'm there, another lens is operational smoothness, but these two things tend to come together. So they're time poor because they're getting sucked into the operations. And if the operations was just humming along nicely, perhaps they wouldn't be spending so much time there. So the two classic kind of businesses that we're working with are time poor founders, founder dependent businesses, and problems in operations. And problems in operations are going to look like there might be people performance issues. Perhaps um, they've hired someone, it's not working out, and now the founder has to deal with it. Or the founder is picking up the pieces because they don't trust the team member to be accountable for dealing with something. Or the founder is still dealing with customer service issues because people want to talk to the founder. So it really comes down to the founder still is they have a team, but they're really like a team full of helpers rather than a team that own things. That's the difference, I think.
A team that owns things. I mean, we hear it all of the time, and it becomes self-serving in many respects. It's this vicious circle that they won't they haven't learned the art of delegating. There isn't a plan in place. There isn't clarity of where they're going. No one knows what they're accountable for. So you get this chaotic situation where they stay down in the weeds
Mm.
and just reaffirm to themselves why they have to be there. Um, Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but what's the root cause of this chaos?
I mean, I think it really is around clarity. I think clarity is the thing. Like if the founder was able to say, look, this is your area. You run marketing. This is how we are going to measure the outputs of marketing. Marketing, we're going to see, how many appointments, how many qualified leads are going to appear in the calendar. This is what good looks like, and these are your financial limits before you need to talk to me. They're able to delegate and let go of that area. The problem is they haven't felt like they can let go of the reins because they're in this weird, vicious cycle where the team come to them with a question and then they just answer the question. And unfortunately, that then creates this loop where, oh, I'm a team member. I'm now being trained that if I come with a question, I'll get an answer. But the founder also needs to go through something and break that cycle themselves, and they need to let the team own it. And I believe that that happens through good delegation and ownership, but also coaching. So not giving them the answer and saying, okay, well, if you've come to me with a problem, what options are you suggesting, and what one would you go with? And I've heard a great framework, and we use this one a lot. It's called the 131, and a simple case of saying, if someone comes to you with a problem, one problem, give me three options. It doesn't have to be three, but it sounds good in this context. Three options, and one might be do nothing. And then one is, what's the thing that you would do? And so as you've gone through this process of saying what's your 1-3-1, you as the founder are now feeling more comfortable over time zooming out. If you think that they're choosing good options, unfortunately, if they're not choosing what you think are good options, then you need to go through another process and ask more questions and say, oh, why did you choose this option? And if you ask more questions around why they chose that, you might actually find that they came up with a better option than what you had in your mind in the first place. But if they're choosing something that's really you're sure that's not right, then that's valuable training. So I think you have to go through this in order to come out, as a founder, you need to go through this process of letting go. Unless you've got someone like a general manager, a COO, a director of operations, or one person that you've got between you and the team. But even then, you still need to go through a similar process with them. You need to be able to trust them and go through that process.
Yeah, again, resonates so strongly. We actually use the 1-3-1 in our own business.
Okay.
Something that I used to say to the team members who came to my door. I always said I had an open door policy, but my only request is that if you want my time, that you have already considered those three options. And often the very simple question of saying, well, what would you do if I wasn't here? Just step me through that process, your thinking process. If I wasn't here and you had to make a decision, what would that look like? And it's always very powerful. I mean, ultimately, you start to train people in the art of decision making and the process of decision making, and you get to a point where actually they're empowered to make their own decisions. But it becomes self-fulfilling in terms of continuing to be stuck in that chaos. When if you're answering all of the questions and then you feel that you don't have enough time to get to the vision stuff because actually you're being sucked in. No one can make a decision around here without kind of involving me, because you always give the answer.
And I like what you said about what would you do if I wasn't around, because that's actually one of the questions that I ask to founders. I say, what would you do? What would happen if you were away for 6 weeks in your business? And it's a really telling sign, their answer, because quite often they just laugh. And they laugh not because they find it funny, they laugh because they sense that in 1 or 2 weeks, things are going to start to go wrong. And so that's a really telling sign that they've built something that's not got proper accountability infrastructure in place, and it's running on founder-dependent operating system. Or sticky tape OS.
Sticky tape OS. I love this. So, I mean, again, creating awareness amongst our listeners. If you feel that you have a challenge in delegating, that you've found yourself saying no one's accountable around here, no one takes responsibility. If you're feeling time poor, working more, missing kind of really important moments in your life because the business is sucking you in. If you can't answer that question positively in terms of the what would I do, or how would this business operate if I was to take 6 weeks away, there's a clue here that actually your business isn't running with an operational smoothness that ultimately will create more value in the business.